You keep worrying about things that are already bending in your favor. You don't realize it yet because fear makes progress look like chaos. But Machiavelli would tell you this: when you finally stop trying to control every small uncertainty, that's when the world starts rearranging itself for your benefit. Because power never comes from panic. It comes from poise, from the ability to watch a storm and not flinch. The truth is, most people fail not because they're weak or incapable, but because they can't stop reacting. They think worrying is preparation. It's not. It's hesitation disguised as care. You see, Machiavelli believed the one who wins isn't the one who moves the fastest. It's the one who moves last, with precision. But you can't be precise when your mind is clouded by every possible failure. When you spend your nights replaying what could go wrong instead of training your will to act when it matters. Worry is the mind's way of pretending to do something useful. It makes you feel like you're in control because you're thinking about the problem. But in reality, you're just digging a deeper hole for your focus. And once you fall into that hole, you start seeing threats where there are none. You stop trusting your own instincts. That's when opportunities begin to slip away quietly, unnoticed. Machiavelli warned about this kind of paralysis. He wrote that fortune favors the bold, not the reckless, but the calm aggressor who knows when to strike. If you're constantly worrying, you're not bold. You're just fearful with ambition. And that combination destroys more dreams than failure ever could. Because worry doesn't just consume your peace, it consumes your timing. Imagine standing on a battlefield where the right moment decides everything. You know what to do. You've studied every detail. But you hesitate for half a second because you're afraid of what might happen if you're wrong. That's it. The chance is gone. Someone else takes the shot, and suddenly your caution becomes your defeat. What Machiavelli understood better than anyone was this: the world rewards clarity, not chaos. And worry is chaos pretending to be wisdom. You tell yourself, I'm just thinking ahead, but that thought spirals into 20 others, none of which lead to action. You start preparing for outcomes that will never happen. You overanalyze people's silence, their tone, their delay in replying. You become the prisoner of your own overthinking. And when you're imprisoned within your own mind, the outside world stops responding to you. Because the energy you project, hesitation, anxiety, self-doubt, makes others doubt you too. They can sense it. A leader who doesn't trust his own decisions can't be trusted by anyone else. Machiavelli would call that a fatal weakness. He'd say, you've given the world the power to manipulate you simply by showing your inner instability. Every time you worry aloud, every time your face shows stress, every time your tone betrays fear, you broadcast to the world that you can be moved. You can be provoked. You can be broken. The strongest man in the room isn't the one who looks fearless. It's the one who looks unbothered. The one who can stand still while everyone else trembles. Because composure, even when everything is uncertain, is the ultimate form of power. The reason things start working out the moment you stop worrying is simple. You stop resisting life. You stop interrupting the process. Every empire, every victory, every personal transformation moves through stages of chaos before it stabilizes. But if you can't tolerate that instability, you'll sabotage it before it ever matures. Worrying is like digging up seeds to check if they're growing. It kills the very thing you're hoping will flourish. Machiavelli would say that life, like power, requires patience and ruthlessness at once. You must be patient with the process, but ruthless with your mind. Don't let it entertain weak questions like, what if this fails? Instead, ask, what must I become for this to succeed? That shift, from fear to self-command, is when everything starts aligning. You've probably experienced it before. Those rare moments when you were too tired to care, when you just let go and did what you could. And strangely, things fell into place. People responded better. Opportunities appeared. Conversations flowed. That wasn't luck. That was you, finally free from your own interference. The world aligns itself with those who move with certainty, even if they don't have every answer. Because certainty isn't about knowing, it's about deciding. Machiavelli wrote that men are more often ruined by indecision than by wrong choices. Worry is indecision stretched over time. It's the illusion of control stretched thin until it becomes helplessness. There's a Machiavellian way to deal with worry. You don't fight it, you redirect it. You turn that energy into strategy. When your mind starts spiraling, instead of asking, what if, start asking, what now? Convert fear into movement. If you can't stop thinking, then make your thoughts serve you. Channel them into preparation, planning, precision. The key difference is that one comes from panic, the other from power. A worried mind builds imaginary walls. A calm, strategic mind builds real ones. One spends hours predicting betrayal. The other quietly fortifies against it. When Machiavelli advised rulers, he often told them to appear calm even in crisis, because panic spreads faster than truth. If a leader showed worry, the people would sense weakness and chaos would follow. But if he remained composed, the illusion of control became reality. This isn't about faking peace. It's about mastering perception until peace becomes natural. When you stop worrying, you stop signaling weakness to both yourself and others. And that's when life begins to respond differently. You start attracting allies who trust your steadiness, opportunities that match your composure, and outcomes that reflect your quiet conviction. Most people don't realize that their constant anxiety is pushing what they want further away. They chase, they stress, they force, and in doing so, they emit desperation. The world doesn't cooperate with desperation. It cooperates with authority. When you stop worrying, you stop chasing. And when you stop chasing, things start coming to you. That's not mystical, it's psychological. When your mind is calm, you make better decisions. You speak slower, you listen more, you observe deeper. And suddenly, the same life that felt chaotic begins to make sense. Not because it changed, but because you did. So the next time you feel that familiar panic rise in your chest, remind yourself, this moment isn't proof that something's going wrong. It's proof that you're being tested to stay still when everything in you wants to run. That's how you gain presence. Machiavelli would say power belongs to those who can appear immovable even when they're bleeding inside. It's not about pretending everything is fine. It's about knowing that everything is forming piece by piece into what you once worried it wouldn't. Your fear is the fog before clarity, but only those who stand still long enough will see through it. Because once you stop worrying, you finally stop sending mixed signals to the world, and the world, at last, knows how to respond. You begin to realize something strange happens when you stop worrying. Reality starts to bend around your calmness. People who once ignored you start paying attention. Obstacles that looked immovable start shifting slightly in your favor. You begin making decisions with clarity instead of desperation. And Machiavelli would remind you, this isn't magic. This is what happens when power stops leaking through fear. When your inner court, the mind, finally follows your rule instead of rebelling against it. Because a worried ruler loses the loyalty of his own thoughts. He can't command focus, can't summon discipline, can't give orders to himself without his emotions interrupting. But a calm ruler? He rules twice, once over his world and once over himself. Think of how differently you move when you're calm. Your timing sharpens, your tone changes. You begin noticing details you used to miss. That's the silent advantage of letting go of worry. It gives your mind back its precision. Machiavelli saw this as a strategic weapon. He wrote that fortune is like a woman. She submits to those who approach her with bold confidence, not trembling hesitation. When you're worried, you approach life like a beggar, asking for mercy from situations instead of claiming your rightful influence. When you stop worrying, you begin to project quiet certainty, and fortune, in turn, begins to respect you. It's as if the universe itself obeys the one who stops pleading with it. The real danger of worrying isn't just that it makes you unhappy, it's that it quietly convinces you that you're powerless. It makes you forget how capable you are. Worry rewrites your perception, convincing you that control is something you need to fight for instead of something you already have within. Machiavelli would call that the first step to self-defeat, because the moment you start thinking the world is stronger than you, it will be. Power is perception, and worry warps perception. You start seeing enemies where there are allies, chaos where there's simply change, endings where there's transformation. You end up fighting ghosts and calling it preparation. The moment you decide to stop worrying, you begin reclaiming that power of perception. You start reading situations as they are, not as your fear paints them. You stop exaggerating threats and start noticing leverage. Machiavelli's most cunning advice was never to eliminate fear entirely, but to use it, to keep it chained, to make it work for you. So when you feel worry rising, don't push it away. Observe it like a strategist would. Ask, what is this emotion trying to warn me of? What can it teach me about where I still feel weak? Then use it as information, not identification. You're not the worry. You're the ruler deciding what to do with it. People misunderstand what it means to be strong. They think strength is about never feeling fear. But strength is about never being ruled by it. Machiavelli believed that to rule others, you first must master yourself. And mastery isn't silence of emotion. It's discipline of it. You can't command armies if you can't command your own mind. So when life throws you uncertainty, your job isn't to react, it's to stabilize. Because stability is contagious. The moment you anchor yourself, everything around you slowly starts to align with that stillness. Worry spreads chaos. Calm spreads order. You've probably seen it happen before. A crisis unfolds, everyone panics, but one person remains collected. No shouting, no frantic gestures, just quiet focus. People gravitate to that person, don't they? They follow him without question. That's power. Not because he knows everything, but because he's not ruled by the storm. The same applies to your life. Every time you resist the pull of worry, you create an invisible gravity that draws solutions toward you. People trust those who seem unbothered by uncertainty because it feels like they know something others don't, and often they do. They know that worry never improves anything. It only drains the strength needed to change it. And yet, so many people cling to their worry like a shield. They think it proves they care, that they're being responsible. But Machiavelli would laugh at that illusion. He'd say, "You mistake suffering for strategy. Because worrying doesn't prevent pain, it ensures it. It's like rehearsing every possible failure before it happens. It makes you live every version of the loss in advance, even if none of them ever come true. And if they do, then you've lost twice. Once in imagination, once in reality. The rational mind cannot create strategy from fear. It can only react. And a life built on reaction is a life without control. The irony is that the moment you finally stop worrying, your brain becomes capable of doing what you wanted all along. Solving problems, spotting angles, recognizing timing. You can finally see beyond the fog. Because the fog was never outside, it was the noise inside your own head. You don't need the world to calm down for you to feel at peace. You just need to stop feeding your mind panic and calling it awareness. Machiavelli believed the best leaders were those who could remain emotionally steady while surrounded by unpredictability. Because that calmness allows you to notice what everyone else overlooks, the subtle shifts that predict opportunity. When you no longer rush to control every outcome, life reveals its rhythm. You begin to notice patterns. You start understanding that not every delay is a denial, not every rejection is punishment. Sometimes the world pauses your progress to reroute you to something more powerful, more aligned, but you'll only see that when you stop demanding that everything unfold on your timeline. Machiavelli would tell you that impatience is the twin brother of worry. Both stem from the inability to trust your own influence. When you stop worrying, you start trusting again. Not in luck, but in your ability to navigate whatever comes. That's when even your failures start becoming useful. They turn into fuel for the next strategy. You may not realize it, but the energy you radiate when you stop worrying is magnetic. People feel safer around you. They open up, they cooperate, they start reflecting your steadiness. And before long, the entire environment begins responding to your emotional lead. That's the subtle dominance Machiavelli wrote about, not loud control, but silent command. When you're calm, you become unpredictable in the best way. No one can provoke you. No one can manipulate your reactions. They lose their power over you because you've mastered your own. That's what he meant by psychological sovereignty, the art of ruling the unseen forces within so that the outer world follows naturally. You've spent years trying to think your way into peace. But peace isn't a thought, it's a posture. It's the decision to stay centered no matter what happens. And ironically, the moment you make that decision, you start noticing how quickly problems begin solving themselves. Conversations that once drained you stop bothering you. People who once had power over your mood lose their grip. Suddenly, you realize the world isn't as cruel as you imagined. It was just mirroring your unrest. Machiavelli's wisdom was never about cruelty for its own sake. It was about control. And the greatest control is the ability to face uncertainty and say, "I'll be fine, regardless." That's when worry dies, and power quietly returns home. And once that power returns, everything shifts. Silently, almost invisibly at first. The same situations that once made your heart race begin to feel like background noise. You handle what needs to be handled, but you don't let it pull you out of yourself. That's when you start seeing what Machiavelli truly meant by mastery, not dominance over others, but composure under chaos. Because the person who stays unshaken becomes the one everyone subconsciously orbits around. Even your enemies start adjusting their moves to your rhythm, unsure of where your calmness ends and your strategy begins. Worrying used to make you predictable. You'd react to everything, someone's tone, someone's delay, a piece of bad news, and that predictability made you easy to manipulate. People knew exactly which buttons to press. But when you stop worrying, you take those buttons away. They can no longer control you through pressure, guilt, or fear. Machiavelli would say that in politics and life alike, the calm man is the most dangerous one. Because no one can tell what he's thinking, yet everything he does feels deliberate. He moves like a chess master who's already seen the next 5 moves. That's what a mind without worry looks like. It operates from quiet foresight, not emotional noise. There's something else that happens when you stop worrying. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop trying to justify your choices, your pace, your silence. Worry makes you defensive. You talk too much trying to prove that you're doing fine, that you're good enough, that you're understood. But calmness needs no validation. It speaks for itself. Machiavelli once said that appearing self-assured is more important than being understood, because perception shapes reality. The world doesn't reward those who beg to be seen. It rewards those who move as though they already are. When you stop worrying, you finally stop seeking permission to exist. You act, you move, you decide, and the world starts responding to that decisiveness. This is why everything begins working out after you let go of worry. It's not luck, it's alignment. When you're calm, you make fewer emotional mistakes. You say less that needs cleaning up later. You wait long enough to see things as they are before reacting. You give situations the space to reveal their true nature. You give people the chance to show you their real intentions. And because of that, you start playing the long game instead of the anxious short one. You stop chasing immediate comfort and start commanding lasting results. The world, sensing that steadiness, begins aligning in your favor. Not because it suddenly loves you, but because you've become someone it can't easily shake. Machiavelli knew that fortune tests everyone. It doesn't reward those who panic at the first sign of trouble. It rewards those who can keep their composure through uncertainty long enough to recognize where the true opening lies. He'd tell you to treat life like a negotiation. You don't get what you want by pleading, but by projecting calm confidence. Worry ruins negotiation. It makes you fold too soon, compromise too quickly, accept less than you deserve. But when you stop worrying, when you can look chaos in the eye without blinking, you hold the upper hand without even speaking. Because people trust what you don't fear. The truth is, you don't need the world to soften for you. You just need to become too stable for it to shake. Every time you choose calm over worry, you prove that your peace doesn't depend on outcomes. It depends on command. That's what Machiavelli meant when he spoke about inner control being the foundation of all outer power. You could lose everything today, but if your mind remains unbroken, you'll rebuild it all again. Stronger, faster, cleaner. The warrior loses twice, once to the event, once to himself. The calm strategist never loses, he just adapts. And when you live like that, life becomes less of a battle and more of a game you've already learned to play. Soon you'll notice something subtle but profound. Life starts to mirror your composure. Delays turn into timing. Rejection turns into redirection. Uncertainty becomes invitation. You begin to see that what once looked like chaos was simply the universe rearranging itself to test your readiness. And your readiness shows not through effort, but through ease. The more unbothered you become, the more doors quietly open. Machiavelli would call this the art of controlled detachment, the ability to care deeply while remaining unshaken. You still pursue your goals, still plan, still fight when necessary, but without the trembling hand of fear. You've learned to let the current carry you while still steering the ship. That's when life starts rewarding you in ways that used to feel impossible. The right people start noticing your energy. You attract allies who match your steadiness instead of draining it. You start making decisions without the need for approval, and somehow, those decisions turn out better. Because worry clouds instinct, and calmness clarifies it. The intuition you thought was broken wasn't gone. It was just buried under noise. Now, it's clear again. You begin to trust your sense of timing, your sense of people, your sense of self. And when that happens, you stop chasing alignment. It starts chasing you. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said fortune must be dominated, not awaited. You dominate it not through aggression, but through control. Not control over others, control over your reactions. You stop asking, "What if this doesn't work out?" and start declaring, "Whatever happens, I'll turn it in my favor." That is the highest form of confidence. The refusal to be defeated by uncertainty. The refusal to waste life rehearsing fear. Because once you stop worrying, you no longer move from avoidance, you move from intention. And life, in its strange way, bends to the will of the intentional. So stop asking when things will fall into place. They already are. They've been waiting for you to stop interfering. Stop rushing. Stop tightening your grip on everything you can't control. Take a breath. Step back. Let the world rearrange itself in peace. Because the moment you stop worrying, you stop pushing your destiny away with anxious hands, and you finally let it walk toward you.